Let's Dance. This short is basically about Jay and Nia taking dance lessons. That's pretty much it. If you're a big Jaya fan, I guess you will really like this short. But I'm not a huge Jaya fan, so I'm not particularly a big fan of this short. But I will say it does have some enjoyability, especially towards the end where they play the Dancing Pants, which is basically Ninjago's version of Dance Dance Revolution, and basically do well with that. And there's also Nelson and Antonia in the background for some reason, and there's also this character named Vlad Tutu who, from what I heard, was an inaccurate representation of a Romanian. I don't know where I heard that from, but this short also became somewhat the butt of all jokes, and the character Vlad Tutu also became the butt of all jokes when you pause the short at specific times, showing the infamous squash and stretch animation. The meaning of victory. This short is basically interviewing 4 contestants in the Speedway 5 billion. Those being Hypersonic, Richie, The Brute or Adam Brutinelli, and Racer 7. And basically this short just kind of constantly pans through all their perspectives and what the Kitana means to them and how winning the race would feel. Basically, kind of like, I don't want to say it's like a parody of like NASCAR interviews, but it kind of feels like a parody of NASCAR interviews if you've ever watched NASCAR. But if I'm going to be honest here, Hypersonic is on crack. Let's be honest here. He is way too hyper, and this is easily the weirdest short out of these because why the hell was that close-up on Richie's area when we get first introduced to Richie even necessary? Like, why? What camera angle was that? And Richie is easily the weirdest one because I know his whole Ada the Rata spew, even though we never actually get to see Ada the Rata. And then the Brute was just kind of there. He was just kind of there. He did make one joke about how we can't choose our names, and I guess that was the only thing noteworthy about them. But by far the most interesting aspect was with Racer 7's interview, especially with the line, "It feels like someone else is pushing the buttons," which is a very neat foreshadow to what actually happens in Prime Empire, where she tries to break her own programming. And then Jay shows up towards the end, saying that the race isn't what it seems it is, and then gets chased off by a bunch of red visors. So yeah, this was a pretty weird, but interesting short. Manhunt is basically, I think, the last short, either this one or Gayle Gossip one. Either way, this short is basically a continuation of the Stowaway, and basically Scott and Jay are running again from more red visors, and Scott even comes up with a pretty creative plan to kind of sneak past them by taking 2 of their helmets and just disguising themselves as red visors, which didn't really work all that well. But then there was some good action sequences, and even a really funny joke that I still think is funny to this day, and that is when Scott says, "Where did you learn to fight like that?" And Jay responds with this answer, "Dance class," completely disregarding his entire training with Wu. He just said, "Nah, it was dance class." It's like he forgot Wu even exists to him. But anyways, they eventually find the barrier that Scott had, the one with the level 999 stealth barrier, and they're pretty much gone, essentially. But honestly, this short kind of leaves more questions than answers. How did the League of J even form in the first place? How did Jay in this short become from Jay in Manhunt to Superstar Rockin' Jay? And honestly, I could blame this more on Prime Empire as a season, but since these shorts were kind of supposed to provide some useful insight into what the actual season is, I feel that these could also be blamed for lack of information. This short definitely could have answered a lot of questions, and maybe the people behind LEGO could have made another short explaining how Jay became Superstar Rockin' Jay, and even talk about how the League of Jay was even formed. But that's not gonna happen at all. But yeah. Upgrade. This short is basically about the mechanic and wanting to get a better robo arm. Basically, he wants to feel, because his old robo arm didn't have like fingers or anything resembling that, so he wanted an arm where he could actually like do stuff like a regular hand should. Understandable. And there was that moment where, you know, the Ninja let the mechanic get away, and the priceless expression on Lloyd, Kai, Cole, and Zane's face for Jay and Nia's pathetic excuse, which I thought was pretty funny. And we actually get the first reveal of Unagami and his signature logo. So I thought that was pretty cool, and it was pretty important. This short was pretty important, especially in the context of Prime Empire as a season, since the mechanic is much more in a much better, bigger position than he was in seasons previous, like Skybound or Sons of Garmadon, where he only made a cameo appearance in the latter season that I mentioned, Sons of Garmadon. So it was really, really nice to see the mechanic finally being taken seriously and getting a great introduction to a very mysterious antagonist. The Stowaway. Now, if you ask me, if I did this countdown before Prime Empire debuted, this probably would have been my #1 favorite short. But now, knowing what Prime Empire showed and clearly didn't show, it unfortunately does not make it into my favorites list. Or at least it's not the #1 on this list. But it's still a good short regardless. But anyways, this short is basically about Jay running away from Red Visors. That's kind of basically a continuation from the meeting of Victory. And then we finally get introduced to Scott, one of the main side characters of Prime Empire. And he was actually pretty awesome and badass in this short. And him working along with Jay was pretty good. They're a very good dynamic duo. And I even love Scott's comment of, "You're like a ninja." How ironic that your partner is a ninja in real life. But the car chase was awesome, and I enjoyed it. And it would have been my favorite short had Scott not said this line: "I have been waiting for you for a long time." Before Prime Empire came out, people made so many theories based off of this one line, because why would they put that in there if nothing really came out of it? If nothing was ever going to come out of it? I even made a theory talk about that Scott was basically Jay from an alternate universe or a future timeline. And I was clearly wrong in that. And this line is so underwhelming now, since it basically means nothing, that this line alone basically knocks it down in the rankings. Like I said before, if this was before Prime Empire, I would have put it at #1, easily. But because of this line, and it kind of really dulled it down, and due to how overhyped Scott was in this short and in Manhunt, it really makes you wonder, why did they hype it up so much if the actual season didn't really capitalize on it? Gayle Gossip, a closer look. this was basically a news story involving Prime Empire. But I like the way they did it. They made it more mysterious, because that's basically what the entire aura around Prime Empire was. It had a very mysterious aura around it. Like, why did the game emerge now? Why? What happened to it? What happened to Milton Dyer, basically? There were so many questions that the season would later answer, and I really did like that the season later answered these questions. And then we get to see Lil Nelson say that he hasn't seen his mom in a while because she likes the game, which is a very eerie reference to the fact that they get whisked right into the game itself. And then we see Zane being all full-on boomer and saying, "These video games are dangerous." Only this time, he's right. The boomers are right in this case. But the one thing I did find a little odd was when Gayle Gossip was finishing like her interview, I guess, or her closer look, when Lil Nelson went into the game, how did they not notice a white flash behind them? Like, it was literally right behind them. How did you not notice that? I would definitely notice a white flash if it was right behind me. So, yeah, that was the only thing that kind of bothered me about the short, but for the most part, it was pretty good. A actually good way to make the news somewhat interesting, even in Ninjago form.